At 11 years old, Warren Buffett made his very first investment and his very first mistake. He bought 3 shares, sold too soon, and then watched the stock soar right after he got out. If he'd held on, that small trade could have been worth more than $10,000 in today's terms. That sting taught him a simple rule he would carry for the rest of his life: be patient when it matters most. This is the story of how a quiet kid from Omaha turned one early misstep into a lifelong philosophy, and how you can use that same principle to build lasting wealth. Warren Edward Buffett was born in 1930, just as the Great Depression tightened its grip on America. He saw storefronts shuttered, neighbors scraping by, families stretching every dollar. His father, once a banker, rebuilt as a small-town stockbroker, teaching by example that money is fragile, but resilience creates options. From that backdrop, Warren discovered 2 truths early: scarcity sharpens focus, and crisis breeds opportunity. By 6, he was walking door to door selling Coca-Cola for a small markup. By 7, he added gum and magazines. He learned inventory, pricing, and customer behavior without ever using those words. He learned that profit lives in the gap between cost and value, and that honesty brings repeat customers. At 11, after saving patiently, he bought his first 3 shares of City Service at $38.25 each. It felt like stepping onto a bigger field, a place where ideas, not just footsteps, could multiply money. Right after he bought, the stock fell from $38 to about $27. He felt the knot in his stomach that every investor knows. He held on, telling himself to wait. When it crawled back to $40, he sold, relief flooding in. Days later, the shares sprinted to roughly $200. The difference between okay and excellent came down to patience. That moment became Buffett's first durable lesson: markets repay the patient and tax the restless. Years later, he'd summarize it this way: the stock market is designed to transfer money from the active to the patient. He didn't just learn to hold, he learned to decide based on business value, not mood swings or headlines. In college and graduate school, Buffett found the teacher who would give structure to the lesson he felt in his gut: Benjamin Graham, author of The Intelligent Investor. Graham's idea was radical in its humility. Don't predict prices, buy value with a margin of safety. If a business is worth $1 and you can buy it for 60 cents, you don't need a perfect forecast. You need discipline. Buffett later said Graham was the second most important man in his life, after his father. From Graham, he drew 2 rules he would repeat for decades. Rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Of course, nobody bats 1,000. The point isn't perfection, it's asymmetric decision-making. Protect the downside and give the upside time. Buffett also learned to treat stocks as pieces of real businesses. A share isn't a blinking quote, it's a claim on earnings, assets, and future cash flows. When you think like an owner, panic feels less urgent and time becomes your ally. Buffett began as a collector of what he jokingly called cigar butt stocks, unloved, low-quality businesses bought so cheap there was one last puff of value left. It worked, especially in thin, inefficient markets. But it had limits. Bad businesses demand constant turnover and attention. Enter Charlie Munger, who nudged Buffett to evolve. It's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. That shift unlocked compounding at a different level. Instead of hunting scraps, Buffett sought economic moats, enduring advantages like brand power, network effects, cost leadership, or regulatory barriers. Coca-Cola wasn't just a beverage. It was a global habit, a distribution miracle, a brand that lived in memory and celebration. With moats, time magnifies returns. Quality compounds, culture compounds, customer trust compounds. The longer you hold, the more the business can do the heavy lifting for you. Buffett's most underappreciated innovation wasn't a stock pick, it was a funding model. Through insurance subsidiaries, he accessed float, premiums collected today for claims paid in the future. If managed prudently, Float behaves like low-cost, sometimes even negative-cost capital, available to buy great businesses. This did two things. First, it buffered Berkshire against the need to sell in bad times. Second, it allowed opportunistic buying when others were forced to sell. Here's the quiet truth of compounding. Structure matters. The right capital base, the right incentives, the right partners. These amplify even average ideas and supercharge great ones. And through it all, Buffett kept the temperament that started with that childhood trade. Avoid forced decisions, resist fads, and let time work. People often ask, what's Buffett's secret? He'll tell you there isn't one, just a process almost anyone can understand and few can consistently follow. 1. Knowability over novelty. If you can't explain in plain language how the business makes money, pass. 2. Price versus value. A good company at the wrong price can be a bad investment. A great company at a fair price can be extraordinary. 3. Margins of safety. Expect surprises. Protect your downside on every decision. 4. Hold long enough. Let compounding turn small edges into meaningful differences. 5. Temperament over IQ. Markets test your nerves more than your knowledge. That first trade at 11 was a miniature of all 5 principles. He bought what he half understood, sold when emotions spiked, and paid opportunity cost for impatience. The $10,000 lesson wasn't a tragedy, it was tuition, payment for a philosophy that would produce billions. Let's make this actionable. Here's a 4-step checklist, simple enough to write on a note card, rigorous enough to anchor your process. Step 1. Understand the business. What problem does it solve? Who pays? Why can't competitors copy it cheaply? If you can't answer in 2 or 3 sentences, keep learning or move on. Step 2. Estimate value conservatively. Use rough ranges, not fragile precision. Consider earnings power, reinvestment opportunities, balance sheet strength, and returns on capital. Step 3. Demand a margin of safety. If your conservative value is $100, don't pay $98. Build in room for the unknown. Step 4. Decide your hold logic before you buy. What would make you add? What would make you trim? What would make you exit? Decisions made in calm beat decisions made in storms. Finally, give yourself time. Compounding needs seasons. Your edge isn't speed, it's staying power.